I'm Sophia, and welcome back to Coming Home to Her. I want to talk about something today which I was thinking about actually the other day that I thought was kind of funny as a reflection, which is about the certain beliefs or ideas that I had kind of instilled in myself in my early 20s, which either turned out to be a lie or has been rewritten in a different way. And I think there's something really powerful about being able to look back at this certain age or, beginning of your adulthood, where you had all these ideas about love, about success, about friendships, and how your life would be or look like once you get to a certain age. And really just think like, oh my gosh, I really had no idea what the heck I was talking about. So I made a list of 10 different lies, I'm calling them, where I have my little notes. And I'm just going to read through them and reiterate about the things that I personally have learned or have rewritten and kind of changed my perspective around. So the first one I've written down is that adults have it all figured out. And by the age of 25, which is what I currently am, turning 26, I would also have it all figured out. And it's funny because when I think back to when I was a teenager and even, a child, I always looked up to adults in the sense that, wow, they're so old, they have everything figured out, they are super responsible, and, everything is on track for them. And of course, when you are 15 or 16, when you speak to someone who is 20 or 21, you're like, wow, they're so old. And you have this sense of admiration for them. And then once you become of these ages and naturally grow up as an individual, you realize, holy crap, I don't have anything figured out. I almost find it ironic because, of course, there is a difference of when you're in your 20s versus your 30s, your 40s, 50s, etc. Naturally, you have more life experience. You learn more about yourself and the things that you like and would like to have. But the one thing that never changes is that you are figuring it out along the way. I guess just kind of reflecting and thinking about myself at this ripe age of being 25, I, to be honest, don't know what I did expect for my age. I think I've been kind of going with the flow, but of course, have always had goals in mind. Yes, I have achieved, many, but yet there's also a lot of things where I personally don't feel like a full-grown adult. And sometimes I do forget how young I am as well. And then I look at my friends who are in their 30s, and it's funny because, yes, of course, they perhaps are a bit more stable in regard to their career, maybe a bit more aware about what they would like to do and how their path will look like. And that's also, of course, something very individual. I personally believe that everybody has a certain path that they're supposed to be on, and your choices and decisions navigate you through that. But then also my friends who are in their 30s, they also don't know what the heck they're doing in another aspect, and they are just winging it just like the rest of us. And I find it also very comforting to know that and really being okay with the unknown, even though it's very anxious ridden. So that is the first lie that I had an idea of that I've realized is not true. The next one I wrote down was that being low maintenance was a personality trait worth having. This one is a bit, I want to say, controversial. I most definitely beforehand was, super chill, go with the flow, easygoing, which I still am, but I would say now more structured with boundaries. And it's funny because if I reflect back kind of in the last 3 years, I most definitely can pinpoint certain situations that I tagged along to, which I genuinely did not want to join. But because I was kind of in that swing of the flow with, people that I was getting to know or thought were cool to hang out with, you tend to kind of just be this go with the flow, chill person to tag along and fit in. And of course, that's something that you have to learn on your own through experience. But nowadays, it's like if I don't want to do something, I'm not going to do it. And there's, of course, aspects of, being low maintenance and high maintenance. I mean, we're not here to be a brat, but of also just respecting, your feelings around certain situations. And if perhaps it's something that you don't feel good about, there's nothing wrong with leaving a situation where maybe they'll consider you to be high maintenance because you didn't like it. And the third lie that I've written down was, I thought I needed everyone to like me. I previously touched on this before in another episode, I believe, where I would say for myself, growing up in Hawaii, there is this aspect of being naive and not, exposed to the world with different people. And it's funny because I remember the first few times that I realized that someone didn't like me. And of course I was like, well, what's going on? Like, I'm just being myself. Like, this is kind of weird. But also in hindsight, it's really important, I personally believe, to not be liked by everyone. Just like I don't like everyone, just like you don't like everyone. And it's not, of course, creating any malicious intent towards anyone, but it's being okay with the fact that you are a certain individual, just like another person is. And sometimes those personalities don't mesh. And that's really okay as well. Another thing that I wrote down about this one is that, when you are that kind of person who wants everyone to like you, you, of course, with that, maybe even not even realizing it, subconsciously tone yourself down or shrink yourself to kind of fit into certain situations. Because naturally, if you are a certain type of way and someone doesn't like that, there is this tension. It could be, through jealousy or despise, anything. But there is something so freeing about being okay with the fact that not everyone's going to like you. And it is what it is. The other thing that I wrote down was that real friends never drift apart. Personally, in my life, 99% of my friendships are of long distance, as most live at home and spread throughout the world. And one thing that I have learned is that, of course, naturally your relationships are going to, they are going to drift. There's going to be space. You both don't fit in each other's daily lives anymore. Everybody has a different schedule. Sometimes you're on completely different, life paths in that sense of a few of my friends are having babies. Others are young, wild, and free and single. Others are living with their partners. Some are unemployed. Oh my gosh. Some are unemployed and some are in a super intense career. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when there is a drift in a relationship, particularly in a friendship, sometimes that can be interpreted as, something being wrong or the other person not liking you or that there's just weirdness around it. But personally, my best friendships and the ones that I know are, dear to me and solid friendships are the ones that I don't even talk to for months on end. And then when we physically reunite, it feels as if we saw each other yesterday. And for me, those are my favorite types of friendships and just something to be aware of. I mean, we can't cater to everyone. We cannot take hours out of our days every day to speak to everyone. And that's also something that is just a part of life and normal. I mean, honestly, thank God for social media because you're able to keep up with everyone's lives in one aspect or another. And otherwise, I mean, it's not that deep. You just need to reunite and figure out how the relationship is from that point moving forward. The other thing that I wrote down was confidence means never doubting yourself. I would like to say that I am a confident person, and I'm very thankful for how my mother and my father raised my brother and I in that aspect. But also that doesn't mean that you don't have moments of doubt. I'm sure that if we think of every single famous person in the world that we know of, or every single extremely successful person, whether it's business or the whole nine yards, they have also had moments of doubt. And I would say, particularly reflecting on my own personal experience, when you are in a new transitional phase, when you are moving to a new place or, kind of starting from scratch, that creates a lot of doubt within yourself. And you tend to kind of go very inwards and almost kind of panic where you think, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to be happy? Am I going to be able to make real friends? Am I going to be able to get a job that I like? And the list keeps going on. And I think that doubt is something that we shouldn't be scared of. But I do think there are ways to utilize doubt in the aspect that acknowledge it, it's fine, but I'm not going to let this defeat me, or I'm not going to let this doubt keep me from doing something that I want to do or trying something new. And so I think it's more of an awareness around it. And also keeping in mind that everybody feels like this. Everybody has doubtful moments. Everybody has felt doubt in their life regardless. And we can't avoid it. So that's another, I think, a really good thing that I've learned, which is a great reminder for everyone. And, actually, let's rewind because I wrote something down. Confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's deciding to move forward anyway. Wise words. The next lie that I have written down is successful people feel successful. I listened to a really great podcast clip the other day, actually, where the host was referring to Matthew McConaughey. I think that's how you say his last name. In the aspect of how he once said a speech, I believe it was at a Grammy or Oscar or something, about how, you have a goal, you get there. And you don't take a moment to celebrate the small wins. Once you reach a goal, sometimes you don't even realize that you have reached it and you have already created another goal for yourself to keep moving forward. And what I want to say here is, I'm sure this is true for every very successful person in the world as well, and also for myself, and I'm sure for you as well. You can definitely think of things that you have achieved or a natural evolution within your life that you did put in the hard work. And those things don't come while you're sitting on the couch scrolling on your phone. That comes through action and consistency and perseverance. And what I want to say about this is that although you may be super successful or, us admiring successful people in the world, they don't always walk around and feel as they are extremely successful. There is that sense of always wanting and chasing what's next. And I personally believe that's also just a part of our society and the world we live in, as we have so much opportunity, which is so beautiful and incredible, but also so important to go back and, reflect on yourself and be thankful and appreciative and proud of yourself for achieving, the small things or certain goals that you had set out for yourself, because you probably didn't even realize and you just ignored it and you thought like, okay, what's next? And so I also wrote down something, which is success doesn't feel like an arrival. It feels like a direction. And sometimes you have to stop and look back and see how far you've actually come. The next lie that I wrote down for myself was my worth was tied to how productive I was. This is something I have to say that I still struggle with. I notice in the current life phase that I am in and experiencing, there are moments where if I'm not super productive one day, I feel as if like, oh my gosh, I lost my, swing of it. Maybe whatever I'm working towards isn't gonna be rewarded to me, or all these moments and kind of anxieties creep into your mind. I think worth is a strong word, but sometimes it's easy to also compare yourself to external factors or people around you who are maybe older or maybe younger or the same age, who seem as if they are, head on, going strong, 100 miles an hour, being super, fast-paced in their lives. And I guess it depends per person whether that is tied to your worth. But if we just kind of maybe reiterate that honestly and say more tied to your guilt or tied to guilt. I was on holiday the past few weeks and I wasn't so stuck to my routine and the things I need to get done as I am while I'm home. And I definitely felt guilty moments of like, oh my gosh, I'm not being as productive as I should be. Like, oh, there's like this little anxiety in the back of my head. But also, I listened to another podcast the other day, and the host was speaking about how she really has to allocate time throughout her week to really step back and take a moment to herself. Because while things can be time consuming, there's a deadline, a lot of pressure around it, a lot of stress, you can work as much as you want, but your body is going to burn out at one point. And going back to that kind of self-awareness of when you are getting to those breaking points and just incorporating small things which help you rewind, or no, which help you wind down. That's the better word. And so it is what it is. I think it's just a reminder and important for us to just take notice of these small things, but also not letting it be tied to our worth. And lie 8, which I wrote down, is love is supposed to feel urgent and intense all the time. I think this is a big one that a lot of the girlies can relate to. I would say when I was younger, I had this sense of, or this assumption, honestly, that love was supposed to feel like fireworks, like this intense explosion of life. And I've learned that that's not how it should be. Of course, there are elements to it. I mean, you want to be attracted, you want to have this connection and chemistry with whomever you're seeing or dating or in a relationship with. And I think a lot of people, especially when they're younger, they confuse intensity with depth, which can also translate into toxic relationships, of course. And we want to steer clear of that. Sometimes intensity is also just anxiety. That's something that I had to learn, which has given me a lot of, comfort and security, as well as just learning about those things. I mean, it's important for all of us. So line number 9 that I wrote down is moving abroad would be enough on its own. I just want to be clear about one thing first, which is I didn't move away from home to escape anything or, do anything like that. I was presented with opportunities which I didn't want to pass up. And I always dreamed of living in a big city. I always dreamed of living in a place that was more central in the world, where you could travel around easily, because in Hawaii, everything takes minimum 6 hours by plane to get anywhere. And so that was always a big dream of mine. But the one thing that I've, kind of reflected on and can say is that you don't become a new person when you move to a new place immediately. And I would say that in every single place that I've lived, each place has given me something, whether it is a new experience, challenged me in various ways. I would say every single place has been incredibly challenging in its own way, and yet also very rewarding in another sense. The funny thing is that each place didn't give me, this extra sense of confidence or this sense of self. It really highlighted all the things and brought out everything internally within myself that I needed to work on, or that I needed to take head on and challenge myself with. You can change your whole life, move to a new place, have this idea of this grand adventure and everything's going to be magical and beautiful and blah, blah, blah. But there's a whole other element to it that is really going to test whether you are strong enough to, grow a life there, to go through the hurdles of the difficulties which naturally arise. And I personally believe that's something that you only experience if you get out of your comfort zone, out of the place that feels familiar to you, out of the place where, you have people and really being vulnerable and alone in a place forces you to really grow up in many ways that you can't even imagine. So that's my take on it. And the 10th lie that I wrote down is homesickness would go away faster than it did. I had a moment the other day on Monday, actually, when I was flying back to Vienna, where I was looking through old photos on my phone from when I was home now in Maui for 2 months. I started tearing up on the plane. I would say that at this moment, my homesickness isn't so strong, but yet it's something that comes in waves. I also think when I initially moved, it wasn't something that I thought I was going to be challenged with. I mean, I was 18, so what was I expecting, honestly? But homesickness is something that is a really weird feeling. For myself personally, I notice when I am home for an extended period of time, or when I go home, when I come back, it hits me like I'm getting bulldozed. And you cry. You miss your family, you miss everything that's familiar, you miss a place that you feel extremely connected to and that almost represents you in one way or another as an individual. Thank God for FaceTime, because I don't think I could survive without speaking to my family every day. I remember my parents told me when they moved away from home to Hawaii 35, 40 years ago. Obviously, iPhones and FaceTime and those things didn't exist long before Skype. And they could only call via payphone once a month, which was extremely expensive. I can't imagine living on the other side of the world in a 12-hour time difference to my parents and only calling them once a month and not being able to share photos or things about my life on, a daily or weekly basis. It's funny because I think homesickness is also a feeling that is impossible to describe. At the moment, I don't feel homesick. It's also for myself a part of adaptations. When I adapt to a new place, when I am busy in my own life and I have things that I'm working towards, it also, kind of shuts that whole side of my brain down, which is a blessing and a curse. And I always say that to people who are like, oh my God, you're from Hawaii. Like, that's incredible. I'm like, yeah, it is. And, I love it. I'm so proud. And it's amazing. But it's a blessing and a curse to live on the other side of the world to your family. And I guess just like a little final note on this, it's also sometimes hard and difficult when you think of homesickness to also realize that your parents are getting older. You are getting older. Naturally, you're building a life intentionally and also subconsciously in one aspect that's far away from everything that's familiar to you and far away from your home and your family and the people who you grew up with, which is a sad aspect, of course, and something that is, it's pretty heavy, but it's also so beautiful in another sense to, explore the world, to open your world, to chase after something that you had to work for. So to close this off, those were the 10 different lies or, small beliefs that I had for myself. And I absolutely am not judging that younger version of myself. If anything, it's cute. And I personally believe these are things that you have to learn through experience. And there's nothing wrong with anything, but of course, naturally, as you evolve, your perspective changes, your experience change. And I'm sure as well, if you can reflect on your own life and the things that you've gone through, and maybe even think about the small beliefs that you had instilled in yourself, which turned out to not be true. I mean, that's growth. And another thing, of course, is that you were just doing the best you could with the version of yourself that you were at that time. So thank you for listening and welcome home. Bye.